organisms. So what would be the answer to this question? Now, as you know, Earth contains millions of organisms. There is a lot of biodiversity on the planet Earth. So if you go outside, you will see a lot of species of plants and animals, insects, even microorganisms. So these living organisms, or the names of these living organisms, they vary from place to place. The local names of these organisms vary from place to place, even within the country. For example, if we take example of ladyfinger, which is okra, okay, in Hindi it is known as bhindi. In Bengali it is known as dhirosh. So you can see even a single, you can say, organism can have more than one name, and it can have many local names, many native names. So this creates a confusion in identifying and studying specific species. Therefore, each organism should be known by a single name. So by that name, that organism should be known throughout the world. So there is a need to standardize the naming of the organism. Now to achieve this, organisms are named and characterized according to their roles. Okay. So what role they play in the ecosystem or in the nature. So basically early classification, if we talk about early classification, they were based on the use of the living organisms, how they benefit the human beings. Based on their benefits, based on their use, the animals were classified. Now the modern day classification system, they are based on morphology, embryology, cytology, evolutionary relationships. So now living organisms are being classified because you cannot study each and every organism. So there are millions of organisms present on the earth. So you cannot study each and every organism. That's why you need to classify the organisms, first of all, to manage the diversity. Okay, so to manage the vast diversity, you need to classify the living organism into groups. And then you can study these organisms. So living organisms are classified to manage the vast diversity on the earth efficiently and to understand the relationship between different organisms. So these different organisms, they are similar to each other. And they are also similar to the organism which existed millions of years ago. So by classification, you can manage the vast diversity present on the earth, and then you can find out the relationship between them. You can study them. Now this practice, known as biological classification or taxonomy, has several key objectives and benefits. Let's study the objective and benefits of biological classification. First is organization. So by organization, what do you mean? Means organization of the vast number of known organisms into groups. Means you can organize the biodiversity into groups. And how you create these groups, how you group these organisms into various categories based on shared characteristic or based on similarities or based on common characteristics. Now, there are millions of species on the earth. So this organization is very important for managing the biological diversity. Next is identification. So by characterizing organisms into structural hierarchy, scientists can more easily identify unknown organisms. Okay, the second one is identification. So this is particularly important in fields such as agriculture, where identifying the pest and the beneficial organisms can have significant implication. So you can identify the pest which causes harm to the crops, or you can identify beneficial organisms, okay, which can enhance the productivity of the crop plants. The next is understanding the evolutionary relationship or you can say phylogenetic relationship. So all organisms, they are quite similar to each other. Okay, and they are similar to the organism which existed millions of years ago. Means there was a certain common ancestor, and from this common ancestor, all these species are formed. Okay, species 1, species 2, species 3, 4 and 5. So there was a common ancestor, and these species, they adapted to their environment. Okay, and they slowly diverged and formed the new species. Now, by studying the traits and characteristics of the organisms within and across different groups, scientists can infer their evolutionary histories and understand how different species are related to each other. So, if you know about the traits and characteristics of an organisms, then you can infer their evolutionary histories or evolutionary relationship. Okay. You can tell about their ancestors. Okay, this might be the ancestor of that organism which exists today. The next one is communication. Now, standardized classification system provides a universal language for scientists around the world. So if we have a standardized classification system, then obviously it provides a universal language for the scientists around the world, because all the scientists, they are working together to develop this standardized classification system. Now, this ensures that when researchers refer to organisms, they are clearly understood regardless of regional common names that might be confusing or duplicated for different species. So we have given a particular scientific name to a particular organisms. So this organism is known by that scientific name all over the world. So this prevents the confusion. So whenever you are referring to a particular organism, okay, suppose you are talking about mango, which is Mangifera indica. So if you are saying Mangifera indica, in all over the world, people will understand, yes, you are talking about mango. The next one is conservation. So you can conserve the endangered species. So classification helps in assessing the biodiversity of different regions. So by classification, what you can do? By grouping these living organisms into various categories, what you can do? You can assess the biodiversity which is present in a particular region. So this will help you identifying the species at risk of extinction. Okay, and then you can devise the conservational strategies. You can conserve these species. Once you know, okay, these species are at risk of extinction, then you can devise certain conservation strategies so as to protect them. The next one is medical and biotechnological research. So, in medicine and biotechnology, knowing the classification of organism can help in discovery and development of new drugs, vaccine and other technologies. So, human, they are very curious, they want to explore new areas, they want to discover new species, and they want to use these species for the human welfare. So you get a lot of antibiotics, okay, from these species, these different organisms, such as fungus and bacteria. Now, what happens? If there is a group or if there is an organism which belongs to a particular group and this organism is producing antibiotic. Okay, this is an organism which is producing antibiotic and this belongs to this group. So, it is, okay, so chances are very high the other organisms present in this group, they might also produce the antibiotic. Okay, for example, here it is an organism belonging to the same group might produce similar compound such as antibiotic or some other products. And they have similar genetic structure also, means they have similar genes also, DNA sequences also. You know, gene, they code for a particular product. Gene is made up of DNA, DNA is transcribed into RNA, RNA into proteins. Okay, so the organism which are belonging to a particular group, they have similar characteristics. So if one organism is producing certain compound, it is chances that another organism belonging to that same group might be producing that compound. Now, next one is agricultural development. So by classification, or why is classification important in agriculture? Because we can select crops and livestock having desirable characteristic. So now we have grouped the organism into various categories based on similarities, based on common characteristic. So we know the characteristic of that group, or we know the characteristic of that organism. So we can select the plants or the livestock which have the desired traits. Okay. And then we can produce hybrids also. Clear? And these crops, suppose, they can be used for controlling pest also. So some of the crop can be pest resistance, and they can also use to understand the host parasite relationship. Now it aids in identification of species that can be beneficial or harmful to crops and the animals. So we can identify the species which are beneficial for the crops as well as for the animals, or which are harmful to the crops as well as the animals. Now let's discuss this question. Why are the classification system changing every now and then? So let's discuss this question. Now, scientific studies ever work in progress, and new species and organisms are being added. So now they are exploring new areas. We have better technology now. Okay, we have better microscopes. We have DNA sequencing techniques. So now we can, you can say, study these organisms. You can say at genetic level, at molecular level, we can study them very precisely. We can find out the relationship between different organisms. Okay, we can now explore remote areas, and we can look for new species also. So new species are being continuously added. Okay, so we are finding new species. Now the initial system of classification focused on only the habits and the habitat of the organism. So if we talk about initial system of the classification, they were just based on the habits as well as the habitat of the organism. Now gradually morphology became a tool for classification. So morphology means external features. So later what happened? What was the basis of classification? Morphology became the basis of the classification. Then after this, morphology, embryology, phylogenetic relationship and cytology of the organism, these were the basis of the classification. So all these things were considered during classification of the organisms. Now modern day uses biochemical techniques to classify organisms based on their nucleic acid components. Now modern day classification system, they are using these biochemical techniques also to classify the organisms. And what does biochemical techniques include? They include nucleic acid components. What is nucleic acid? Or DNA and RNA. These are nucleic acids. Okay, so now we are looking at the genetic level. We are looking at the DNA sequences, similarities or dissimilarities in the DNA sequences. Classification system for living organisms change over time due to several key reasons, reflecting our growing understanding of the natural world and the relationship between the organisms. So classification system for the living organism, they are changing over time due to many reasons. Okay, and this reflects what? This reflects our understanding of the natural world. Now we can better understand the species because we have better technologies now. We have better ways to characterize the organisms. We have better microscopes now. We can now understand the evolutionary relationship between the organisms. So these changes are driven by advances in research, technology, methodology in the field of biology. Now, here are the main factors contributing to the evolution of the classification system. So first one is advancement in the molecular biology and genetics. So now, as our ability to analyze the genetic material of organism has advanced, scientists have gained new insight into relationship between different species. So there is advancement in the molecular biology and genetics now, and we can now study these organisms at the genetic or at the molecular level. Okay, now this means we are now able to better understand these species. So DNA sequencing, for example, has revealed previously unknown connections and distinctions among organisms. Connection means similarities, distinction means dissimilarities among the organisms, leading to revision in their classification. Next one is new discoveries. Now, new species are being discovered now, or there is a re-evaluation of the existing species, because again we have better techniques now. We are exploring new habitats and the technology is also advanced. Clear? So now we can again better understand the organisms, and we can also understand the previously unknown or misunderstood organisms. So that's why there is a need for reclassification. Now next one is improved understanding of evolutionary relationship. So again, we can now decipher the evolutionary history and the relationship among the organisms. Okay, now new fossils are being found. Fossils, they are the dead remains of the living organisms that existed in the past. So these fossils tells us about the evolutionary relationship. So these fossils, okay, which these fossils are of the living organism that existed millions of years ago. And by studying these fossils, we can, you can say, find out the relationship between the present day organisms and the organisms which were living millions of years back. Because the structure is same, the morphological features are same. So we can say, okay, this might be the ancestor, or this might be the connecting link. So by studying the fossils, by paleontological studies, we can find out the evolutionary relationship. So that's why there is a need for reclassification now. Next one, change in the taxonomic criteria. Now the criteria used for classifying organisms has evolved. Earlier system, they were based on just visible traits, mean morphology as well as the behavior, whereas modern systems, they rely on the genetic information or the molecular or the cytology. Okay, biochemical studies. So this shift has led to reclassification of many organisms, because now we are looking at the genetic level, and we are now better understanding this evolutionary relationship. Okay, so that's why there is again need for reclassification now. The next is technological advancement. So again, we have better microscopes now, we have better DNA sequencing tools, we have better softwares to analyze the relationship between the different organisms. So these advancements had unveiled complexities within organisms that were not previously understood, leading to refinement in their classification. The next one is philosophical and conceptual shift. Now, different scientists, they think differently. They have different perspective. Okay, like species have been defined in many ways. Clear? Like there is species can be defined according to biological species concept, or morphological species concept, or phylogenetic species concept. Okay. So scientists, they think differently. Their perspective is different. Okay, and the nature of biological diversity can also lead to the changes in the classification system. So philosophical and conceptual shifts. So this include the way the scientists think about the species, about the evolution, and the nature of biological diversity. For instance, the concept of species itself is a topic of ongoing debate and refinement, influencing how organisms are grouped together. So here it is, in concept of species is itself a topic of debate. So species has been defined in many ways. Okay, we'll talk about this also in our upcoming slides. So species, it is a group of organisms which have similar characteristics, which is similar morphologically, which can interbreed with each other. Members of a species can interbreed with each other, but they cannot interbreed with the members of the other species. So species has been defined in many ways. Okay, so this is you can see this philosophical and conceptual shifts include the way the scientist is thinking, which parameters they are using. Global collaboration and standardization. Now there are international collaboration. So scientists from different countries, they are working together to standardize the classification system. So this can also influence the classification system. Okay. So the global consensus can lead to changes as different perspective and regional research findings are integrated into a unified system. So now there are international collaboration, a lot of scientists from a lot of countries, they are working together. So they are developing a standardized classification system. Okay, so earlier, suppose there was one classification system based in one country. Okay, another classification system based in another country. So now they are developing a standardized classification system. That's why the classification systems are changing. Let's discuss this question. What different criteria would you choose to classify people that you meet often? So what would be the answer for this question? So classifying people we meet often can be approached from various perspectives depending on the context and the purpose of the classification. Now, unlike scientific classification, which is based on biological traits and genetic relationship, classifying people in social, professional or personal context is more subjective and can involve a range of the criteria. So what are these criteria? First of all, here are several criteria that would be considered, each serving different purposes. First is the personal relationship. Okay. So you have certain personal relationship with your family members. Then you have relationship with your friends, acquaintances, colleagues and neighbors. Okay. Clear? So these are all personal relationship. So you classify different people based on the personal relationship. So these people are quite close to you. Then second one is the professional relationship or role-based relationship. So in your office, you have your co-workers, you have peers, you have managers, supervisors, clients, customers, mentors and mentees, service provider like barista and mail carriers. So these are all professional relationships. So you classify people based on professional relationship also. So you go to the office, you talk to people. Okay, so these are all professional relationships. So you are classifying the people based on professional or the role-based. This is also known as role-based. Next is interaction frequency. How much you are interacting with the people. Are you interacting with them daily, weekly, monthly, occasionally or rarely? So obviously if you're talking to them daily, you will have better bonding with them. If you are talking to them rarely, obviously you won't be having a good bonding with them. You're talking to them rarely. The next one is interest in activities. So if two people, they have same hobbies, then obviously their bonding will be more. They will hang out with each other more. So suppose this includes sports and fitness enthusiasts. So if the two people, they are enthusiastic for sports and fitness, okay, they might have good bonding. Then if the people, they like gardening, gaming and crafting, so they will be working together. Clear? Then they can be art and cultural aficionados, and technology and gadgets friends, nature and outdoor lovers. So you classify people based on interest and activities also. Okay, so basically it is your interest. If you love nature and outdoor activities, then obviously you will make friends with people which also love nature and outdoor activities. Now next one is communication style. Some people, they are quite direct and they are assertive. Some are open, expressive. Some are reserved and reflective. Some are practical and matter of fact. Some are quite empathetic and supportive. So communication style also matters. So you classify people based on communication style also. So sometimes you are also very reserved, or sometimes you are very open. So you like talking to people. So you can say you will feel good with people who are quite open and expressive. If you are reserved, you won't talk to many people, and you will make friends with people who are quite reserved. Next is perspective or worldwide. So this is the way of thinking. Some people are quite optimistic, they are positive. Some are realistic, some are pessimist, means they are quite negative. Some are innovators, some are traditionalist. Now mutual experiences. Next one is mutual experiences. So at school or at university, you make friends. Okay, at school and university, you are giving exams. So you have similar kind of experiences. Okay, when you go outside, you talk, okay, today we also had an exam. So you have a mutual experience, and you are working in a same project. Again, you will have a similar kind of experience. Then volunteer activities, travel, life milestones, these also are included under the mutual experiences. Means the people at university, people working on a same project, obviously they will have similar kind of experiences. So you bond with them. Okay. Now choosing criteria for classification depends on what's most relevant or important to you or the situation in hand. So basically, you're classifying these people. Okay. You are classifying, or this classification depends on what is most relevant or important to you. What are your habits? What is your thinking? Okay, what are your hobbies? Or the situation you are in. For example, if you're organizing a community event, you might classify people based on their interest and activities to tailor activities or topics of the discussion. So if you are organizing community event, then how you will classify the people? You will classify people based on their interest. Okay, in which event are they interested? Okay, or in which activity they are interested? Or what are the topics in which they would like to have discussion? In professional setting, role-based and interaction frequency criteria might be more relevant for project planning and team dynamics. Obviously, in professional settings, what is happening in your offices? How frequently you are interacting to that person? Okay, or if that person is important for the project planning or the team dynamics. Okay, how much that person is important in project planning or in team dynamics? You will classify them according to this. What is their role in the project? How important they are in the project? So it is important to remember that any classification should respect individual complexity and diversity, avoiding stereotypes or oversimplification. So you should respect individuals' complexity. Means individuals, they are very complex. Some individuals, they have their own complexities. Okay, their habits can be different, their way of thinking can be different, so you should respect it. Now the question is, what do we learn from the identification of individuals and populations? Okay, now first one is diversity and evolution. Now identifying individuals helps in understanding the genetic diversity, obviously, within and between the population. Okay, so each individual is different from the other individual. Okay, so one individual is obviously different from the other individual. So if you understand different individuals, you understand the genetic diversity within and between the populations, shedding light on evolutionary processes and adaptations. So in a population, there are a lot of individuals, and these individuals have variations in them. Okay, suppose there is one population and these are individuals in the population. So these individuals, they are different from each other. Always there are variations within a population, means there is a genetic diversity. Okay, so there is a genetic diversity within the population as well as between members of the different population. So this spread light on the evolutionary processes and the adaptations to different environments. Next is conservation efforts. By identifying individuals and populations, especially of endangered species. So if you identify individuals or the populations, especially of the endangered species, okay, so this species is, you say, okay, I have identified this species is endangered. Okay, or the population of this species is very less, it is going to extinct. Then you can devise the conservation strategies. You can monitor the number of that endangered species, you can monitor the health, you can monitor the breeding success. Next is behavioral studies. So identifying individuals within a population allows researchers to track specific behaviors. Okay, how that individual is behaving in the society. Okay, how that individual is interacting with the ecosystem, or how that species is interacting with the other species. So you know, in an ecosystem, one species interacts with the other species. So you can tell about the behavior of that species. If you identify the individuals or the population, you can also tell about the behavior of that species or of that individual. Now let's discuss this question. This is very easy question here. Scientific name of mango is given to you. You have to identify the correctly written name. So these are the two options here. Okay, these are the two options. What is the correct answer from these options? Let's have a look at the answer. So answer is obviously Mangifera indica. This is the right answer. So why this is the right answer? So this is a scientific name of mango. A scientific name or a biological name has two components according to binomial nomenclature. So what are these two components? First one is the generic name. Second one is the specific epithet. So generic name here is Mangifera. This represents the genus. Indica is the specific epithet. This represents the species. And the genus name starts with a capital letter and the species name starts with a small letter. That's why this is the correct name here. And it is italicized also. So whenever a scientific name is printed, it should be italicized. Now let's discuss this question. Define a taxon. Give some examples of taxa at different hierarchical levels. So you know there is a ranking system. There is a hierarchy. Okay, starting from the lowest taxonomic group to highest taxonomic group. So let's discuss this answer. So taxon, plural is taxa, is a group of organisms that are classified together based on shared characteristic. You should remember this. Or based on similar characteristic or based on common characteristic. Now taxa are organized hierarchically into various levels, each representing a different level of similarity or relatedness among the organism. So you must have studied in your book that each taxa, each category represents a rank, it represents a level. Now the taxa can be broad categories encompassing large number of species to specific groups consisting of closely related individuals. So these taxas can be broad, like kingdom. Kingdom is very broad category, or it can be very specific like species. What is the definition of a taxon again? A taxon is a group of organisms classified together based on shared characteristic and arranged hierarchically into levels. from broad to specific. This is the complete definition of the taxon. Now, examples of taxa at different hierarchical levels. So, domain is the highest taxa. It is above kingdom also. It is the highest taxonomic level. Okay, this is not mentioned in NCERT, but yes, domain is the highest taxonomic level, representing the broadest category. It is the broadest category of the life form. Examples: eukarya, bacteria, and archaea. Then there is a kingdom. Kingdom is the second highest taxonomic level. It is below domain, representing major group of organisms within a domains. Like kingdom Animalia, it includes all the animals. It is a very broad category. And remember, when the category is very broad, then the number of shared characteristics are very less. Example: kingdom Animalia, Plantae, kingdom Fungi, kingdom Protista, which includes unicellular eukaryotes, then Archaebacteria, which includes primitive bacteria, then you have the eubacteria. Now, phylum or division in case of plants. Taxonomic level below kingdom. Okay, phylum is the taxonomic level below kingdom, representing major groups within the kingdom. Examples of phylum Chordata, phylum Arthropoda, Magnoliophyta, Escomycota, and Firmicutes. Then class. Class is a taxonomic level below the phylum, representing group of organisms with similar characteristics. Example: class Mammalia, class Insecta, Aves, Reptilia, Magnoliopsida, Liliopsida. Okay, Liliopsida includes monocots, Magnoliopsida includes dicotyledons. Low class representing group of related families. Order is group of related families. Why we are writing related families? Because these families are very similar to each other as compared to the families which belong to the another class. Example is order Carnivora, primates, order Coleoptera, Rodentia, Lepidoptera, Rosales. Next one is family. It's a taxonomic level below order, representing group of related genera or genus, you can say. Example is Felidae, Canidae, Hominidae, Fabaceae, Rosaceae, and Poaceae. Next one is genus. Genus is a taxonomic level below family and represents groups of closely related species. Okay, example is Panthera, which includes lions, tigers, and leopards. Then you have Canis, which includes wolves and dogs. Homo, okay, is a genus in which humans are included. Then Rosa, Zea, and Quercus. These are all genus. You should remember that a genus can have more than one specific epithet. Like Panthera. Panthera leo is lion. Panthera tigris is tiger. So a genus can have more than one specific epithet. Then let's talk about species. Species is the lowest taxonomic level, representing group of organisms that can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. So this is one of the definition of the species. So these species, the member of a species, they can interbreed with each other, but they are reproductively isolated from the members of the other species. Example is Panthera leo. Here Leo is the species, Canis lupus, lupus is a species, Homo sapiens, sapiens is a species, Rosa gallica, gallica is a species, Zea maize, maize is a species, and Quercus alba, here alba is a species. Okay, you should also remember species the lowest taxonomic category, and at the species level the number of shared characteristics, they are maximum. As you move from species to kingdom or to domain, the number of similar characteristics, they keep on decreasing. Next question, can you identify the correct sequence of taxonomic categories? So these are the three options that are given to you. You have to identify the correct sequence of the taxonomical category. So each one is category. Okay, so each one is category here. What is the correct sequence here? What is the correct sequence? What is the correct hierarchical sequence? So let's have a look at the answer here. A and C. A and C both are correct here. Okay. Clear? So 2 answers are correct here. Kingdom is the largest taxon. Species is the lowest most taxon. Okay. But this is the correct order here. Although some categories are missing, but this is the correct hierarchical system here. So you have the species, then you have the genus, then you have family, then you have the order, you have class, you have phylum or division, and then you have the kingdom. Now let's discuss this question. Try to collect all the currently accepted meanings of the word species. Okay, so species has a lot of definitions. You have to discuss with your teacher the meaning of species in the case of higher plants and animals on the other hand, and bacteria on the other hand. So first of all, okay, how can you define species in case of higher plants and animals? Okay, and what is the meaning of species in case of bacteria, which is a prokaryote? It is a lower organism. So let's discuss the answer. So species has various meanings. Okay, so species have been defined a lot of times. Some of the commonly accepted meaning of the word species are, according to biological species concept, what is species? Species is a group of individuals that can interbreed, means sexual reproduction, that can interbreed and produce fertile offsprings under natural conditions, but they are reproductively isolated from other such groups. So this is biological species concept. Definition according to biological species concept. This concept emphasizes on reproductive compatibility, means they can interbreed. Okay, whether they are reproductively compatible or not. So biological species concept is based on the reproductive compatibility. The next one is morphological species concept. So as the name suggests, okay, this concept defines species based on morphological similarities and differences among the individual. Morphological means external features, whether they have similar external features or different external features. So here, what is the criteria of defining species according to morphological species concept? This is the observable physical traits, means the external traits such as size, shape, color. Sometimes anatomical features are also included. Next one is ecological species concept. So according to this concept, species is defined based on its ecological niche, including its role in the ecosystem, its habitat preferences, and interaction with other species. So it emphasizes the functional role of a species within its environment. So species, according to ecological species concept, it is defined based on ecological niche, first of all. And this include what? Role of that species in an ecosystem. Okay, the habitat which it is living in, and how it is interacting with the other species. Next one is phylogenetic species concept, means evolutionary relationship. So here the species, they are defined on the basis of their evolutionary relationship. So what is species? Species is the smallest monophyletic group in a phylogenetic tree. What does this mean? This means that species includes all the descendant of a common ancestor. So there was a common ancestor, and common ancestor gave rise to species 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's why it is a monophyletic group. Monophyletic group means having a single ancestor, which is giving rise to all the descendants. So it relies on genetic and evolutionary relationship. Next one is genetic species concept. So as the name suggests, it is based on genetic differences, means differences in the DNA sequence or differences in the gene or the genetic makeup among the individuals. So if two species, they have similar kind of DNA sequences or they have similar kind of genes, then they are placed in one group. Okay, so here the species, they are based on genetic differences among the individuals, particularly focusing on the DNA sequences. Now here, organisms, they are, you can say, separated based on the genetic markers, means the DNA sequence. If the two organisms, they have same DNA sequence, they will be placed in one group. Now, in case of higher plants and animals, species are typically defined using combination of biological, morphological, ecological, and phylogenetic species concept. Okay, means reproductive compatibility is biological, morphological traits, morphological species concept, ecological niche, ecological species concept, and evolution relationship means phylogenetic species concept. In case of bacteria, situation is quite complex because bacteria has a unique biology and reproductive mechanism. So bacteria, they reproduce by asexual reproduction, such as conjugation. Conjugation is a kind of sexual reproduction, but it is not a true sexual reproduction. So bacteria, they reproduce by binary fission, okay, or by conjugation, transformation, and transduction. Okay, so there is no sexual reproduction happening in the bacteria. It is multiplying by asexual reproduction. Okay, or there is a horizontal gene transfer, means transfer of genes within the same generation. Horizontal gene transfer can occur through conjugation, transformation, and transduction. So that's why in bacteria there is no sexual reproduction happening here. So bacterial species are not solely based on reproductive compatibility. In case of higher plants and animals, reproductive compatibility can be considered, but in bacteria it is not considered. So how the bacterial species, they are defined? So they are defined on the basis of morphological, physiological, biochemical, and genetic characteristic, and not reproductive compatibility. So this include traits such as cell shape, size, motility, metabolic pathway, biochemical reactions, and genetic markers. Okay, so bacterial species, they are not defined based on reproductive compatibility. Reproductive compatibility came under the biological species concept. Now, phylogenetic analysis, okay, means evolutionary analysis. This is based on comparing the genetic relatedness of different strains, how they are genetically related, is also commonly used to delineate the bacterial species. Okay, so we are using everything to define bacterial species except the reproductive compatibility. So in summary, meaning of species varies depending on the context and the organism being studied. If you are studying higher plants and animals, then you are taking into consideration reproductive compatibility. Also, if you are talking about lower organisms like bacteria, you are not taking into consideration reproductive compatibility. While higher plants and animals are often classified using a combination of reproductive compatibility, morphology, ecology, and physiology, bacteria may be classified based on morphological, physiological, biochemical, genetic characteristic, while less emphasis is given on reproductive compatibility. Let's discuss this question. If you define and understand the following terms: phylum, class, family, order, and genus. Okay, we have already discussed this, so we'll discuss this in brief here. So phylum, it is a level below kingdom and above class in biological classification. It represents organisms with similar body plans and structural characteristics. Examples of phylum: chordata, which includes vertebrates like fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. And these are characterized by the presence of the notochord. So notochord is usually seen during the embryonic stages. Okay, so members of the phylum chordata, these have notochord. Then next one is class. So taxonomic rank below phylum and above order is class, group of organisms with more specific characteristic than those within the phylum. So these, okay, class includes organism with more specific characteristic than those within the phylum, because class, okay, is a lower taxonomic group as compared to phylum. Okay, phylum is a broader category as compared to class. So obviously, at the level of phylum, the number of similar characteristics will be less. And the level of class, the number of similar characteristics or shared characteristics will be more. Example, class Mammalia within phylum Chordata. This includes warm-blooded vertebrates with mammary glands, and typically they give birth to young ones. Then you have the family. Family is a taxonomic rank below order and above genus. It consists of related organisms with even more specific characteristics than those in a class because it is a lower taxonomic group. Family Canidae includes wolves, foxes, domestic dogs, and they share skeletal structures, dentition, and social behavior. Now, next one is order. A taxonomic rank below class and it is above family represents a group of related families with similar characteristic. Example, order Carnivora within class Mammalia includes carnivorous animals like cat, dogs, bears, and weasels sharing traits like sharp teeth and meat-based diet. Then the last one is genus. Genus is a rank below family and above species. It is comprises of closely related species with similar characteristics. Example, genus Panthera. It includes lions, tiger, leopards, and jaguars sharing common features such as skull structure and ability to roar. Now, let's discuss this question. This is the last one. Illustrate the taxonomic hierarchy with suitable examples of plant and an animal. Okay, so here we have taken example of wheat and human. So wheat belongs to kingdom Plantae. Division will be Angiospermae. Class is Monocotyledone. Order is Poaceae. Family is Poaceae. Genus is Triticum. Species is Aestivum. Scientific name of wheat is Triticum aestivum. Then let's talk about the human. Belongs to kingdom Animalia. Phylum is Chordata. Class Mammalia. Order is Primata. Family is Hominidae. Genus is Homo. Species is Sapiens. Okay, so this was the end of the session. I hope the session was quite knowledgeable for you. Thank you very much for listening.